right, a very good Saturday afternoon, residents of Bukit Batok. Thank you for joining us and a warm welcome to our Bukit Batok virtual town hall with Dr. Chi Soon Juan of the SDP. Today's session will be broken up into 4 parts. In the first part, Dr. Chi will be talking about the various problems and issues that Bukit Batok residents have raised. In the second part, he will update you on the various activities and programs that Team SDP has planned for Bukit Batok in the coming weeks and months. In the third part, Dr. Chi will be discussing on the topic of national interests that affects all of us as Singaporeans. In the fourth and final part, we'll be doing a short question and answer session. Here are some ground rules to optimize this session and make it fruitful for everyone present. Everyone here other than Dr. Chi and I, the moderator, will be muted by default to prevent any unnecessary audio disruptions. For the Q&A later, this is important and listen very carefully. If you are typing in your question, please indicate your name followed by your block number and then your question in the chat. You may type in your question even before the Q&A begins. If you are comfortable and willing to ask your question live via audio, then just indicate your name followed by the word in quotation live, L-I-V-E, and we will unmute you to ask the question when appropriate. And similarly to typing in your question, do please introduce yourself with your name and block number followed by your question. Please do keep your question short and to the point. We do have to keep the meeting to an hour, and if there are too many questions, we would regrettably not be able to answer them all, but we would definitely endeavor to do so. Finally, we ask that all of you respect the space and everyone here and not resort to flaming, personal attacks, inappropriate language, and behavior. If an individual is disruptive, we will unfortunately have to remove him or her from the chat. So, without further ado, it's now my pleasure to welcome Dr. Chi Soon Juan to address all of you. Dr. Chi, the floor is yours.
Hello, Bukit Batok. Thanks for coming in to this town hall meeting, albeit in a virtual manner. If the COVID rules didn't have their way, I think we'd be happy to have this in a physical forum. But be that as it may, it's good to be with you. And on this very sunny Saturday afternoon, I hope you're all settled in with your cup of coffee. I've got mine, so I'm good to go. Now, as the moderator Dennis said, we've got only a limited time, so let's get straight into it, shall we? Right after the GE, I got together with a few residents here and went through the 5-year master plan for this constituency. And as we were studying it, came across some projects that were proposed that seemed rather questionable and some even downright bizarre. Take, for example, this proposal of turning this pavilion into a linkway. Can I have the first slide, please, Jens? Yes. If you look at this picture, this photo was taken from a notice board, a map on the notice board of in front of an RC office. And I adapted it just for easy presentation and clarity. Now, if you look at this pink rectangle there, a linkway was proposed for this spot. But at this very spot is where a pavilion is. You may be wondering, why build a linkway that is not attached to anything at all? And a pavilion for that matter. If you see in the second slide here, the pavilion is essentially a standalone structure that serves really no purpose and is not linked to anything else. Can I have the second slide, please, Jen? And this is what I'm talking about. And if you can see, it has no links to anywhere. It's just an isolated structure by itself. Then I think somebody then must have noticed that, and along the way at some point, they amended the proposal. And now instead of changing this pavilion into a linkway, they then proposed the 2 linkways that connects this pavilion now to a block, as you'll see from this next slide. Janice, can I have the next slide, please? Now, again, this proposal makes absolutely no sense, right? Why would you want to connect a linkway to a pavilion that people hardly use, only to have a U-turn back to another block of flats? And then you have other proposals of having barbecue pits where barbecue pit area and seating is already there, or having a playground where a playground already exists in a few, just next to where the proposed site is. Now, all this raises this question. Whoever made this proposal either didn't know the ground or really has no idea of what this area here entails and needs. And an equally disturbing thought is this. Before the elections, when this proposal was originally launched, the PAP-MP candidate there had asked voters to support this renewal program. Now, it's disturbing. Did they know that some of these proposals didn't make any sense and were not supposed to be up there? And then you have other structures there that are equally questionable, and they were all already constructed. One of them, for example, also in the area, was this amphitheater, was back in a park with seats there, as you can see. It was supposed to be, a place where, I guess, right where you see where the overgrown weeds are and grass is, supposed to be the stage area. For what? I really have no idea. It's underutilized, and it really is costly to build and to maintain as well. And then this other structure, it's a lookout. And it looks out over a canal. Now, I can understand if you have a lookout, say the Grand Canyon, or over the spectacular cliffs in say Scotland or wherever. But why would you construct a lookout that hangs out over a canal in Singapore? And then there is this other place that's under construction right now. It's an elevated walkway. It's another lookout point. And if you look at this picture, it looks out over a bus stop and a main road. In this next slide, Janice, can I have the next slide, please? And again, these are all structures that are costly to construct and to maintain. And this is where I question the wisdom of having these structures built, and then in time to come, they become white elephants, hardly used by the residents. But these are things, ostentatious structures that are being put up by the PAP, by the town council, and you've got to be questioning its purpose. Now, compare the structures right now to things that residents have asked for and want to see being built. And one of them is a project that I've been talking about on Facebook for quite a while right now. And that's a walkway from in the area as well, as you can see from this map indicated by this green line. It's from one of the blocks in Bukit Batok. It's in block 187, and they want to see a walkway that doesn't exist right now, but people use it very frequently to get to the bus stop from one side and then from the other to the marketplace. And the problem with this route is that it's on a road. And because there isn't a pathway, pedestrians have to walk on the road, and obviously that's a dangerous proposition. But then when we brought this matter up, the MP for the Bukit Batok, Mr. Murali, said that no, there are existing routes as indicated. Let's go back to that slide there, Janice showed. Indicated by this red line here. and he suggests that we walk, passers-by use the void decks. Now, as you can see, it's a very convoluted route. They're taking quite some wide, a roundabout way of getting to their destination. And we use it on a daily basis, whether you're going to work and going to the bus stop or going to the market, groceries, and especially if you're the elderly or children with strollers and so on and so forth, you find this quite a fair bit of more of walking to do. Now, if you're going to propose those linkways I just mentioned earlier, that goes nowhere, that makes no sense. Why is it not possible for the town council to put up a proposal? Now, nothing is etched in stone at this point. You still have to put up a proposal and to get the funding for the construction of these linkways. Why not abandon those proposals of the pavilion, turning the pavilion into a linkway, and build a proper one where residents want and use, and put in the funds for that, and let's just try to build this linkway for residents for this route. I visited this area here on a Sunday morning, and in that short span of about a little more than an hour, I managed to take this photograph where you see this lady holding a little girl and walking past, and I had expected, and this car went right close to these pedestrians, and this lady had to quickly pull this little girl away. Now, you're talking about a very dangerous situation where there's high traffic, both vehicular as well as human. Build this pedestrian walkway right now. It doesn't take a lot to make a concrete pavement where pedestrians can actually walk safely. Then some of the proposals that you save the money on, you can also use it, and residents have also called for the passageway of this flyover to be widened as well. As you can see, it's a very narrow passage. It connects Bukit Batok to Jurong East, and a lot of people walk across this flyover, but they have told me that, look, it's very narrow and only 1-2 people can pass it at a time. And when bicycle cyclists go across, it's a very dangerous situation as well. Then you have all these things I've brought up before the elections, letterboxes that are in such a derelict state. I think they've removed it now. Why don't we use this money that you save from these unnecessary projects that you put up during your 5-year plan quite unthinkingly, and sink the money into making sure that amenities like this are taken care of? Those are some of the infrastructure that we need to continue to upgrade in Bukit Batok. Then there are these safety issues as well. Before the elections, you remember, I posted this photograph of a construction site right in the middle of a very busy thoroughfare, a square that joins a much frequented food center and coffee shop. And if you look at this whole thing, the place is in tatters, and there are no signs, no cordons, and construction is underway. Very soon after I brought this up, the matter was then quickly resolved, and the contractors came in and cordoned off the area. But that's the problem. Right after the elections, these situations continue. A resident sent me this photograph of a lamppost where the electrical wiring is exposed. Again, we brought this up on my Facebook, and very quickly the town council came and took care of the situation. There was also this car park where in the middle of the car park, there was this construction going on. But as you can see, they had used canvas tarpaulin to wall off the construction area, prevent people from looking at it. But the problem is that it also prevents sight of oncoming traffic if you're moving out from the car park. And I just snapped this photograph. It presents a very dangerous situation. After a little while, again, the town council came and rectified the matter. Another resident brought this situation up where drain covers were missing from the drains in here and said that on one occasion he had fallen into this drain, injuring his knee. And he highlighted the fact that some, people who are wheelchair bound or the elderly in the dark and children just running about. These are the situations that the town council needs to pay attention to, and whatever that you save from not building some of these unwanted, questionable projects, use it to make sure that either it's understaffed or whether there's lack of equipment, or making sure that you contact the relevant authorities to make sure that all these matters are all taken care of. And just yesterday, a resident brought to our attention about some of these steel wires that are being held up, and I've just seen a couple of them myself. And if you look at it, some of these steel wires are quite invisible, if you will, and not easy to sight, especially when you're in the dark. And she related that there was this cyclist in the morning at about 6 a.m. when it was still dark and didn't see the wire and rode right into it and injured himself. These are the things that are brought up repeatedly. The town council needs to do a better job in making sure that the safety of the residents come first. They seem to have forgotten the lesson of that fire in block 210A, which happened just last year, where because the fire hose reel was locked, can you believe it? And when the SCDF personnel came and managed to pry open and get the fire hose out, the water supply was cut off. And as a result, the horrendous fire claimed the life of the resident there in Bukit Batok in block 210A. All these must have been lessons that the town council, that the MP should have picked up and devoted more resources to making sure that the safety of the residents comes first, rather than just putting up proposals to building structures that residents don't want and don't need. So why do I highlight these issues? Why do I bring these matters up? Because this is your home. This is your neighborhood. It's your environment. It's your safety. And if you don't care, then no one will. You think some of these people who are in charge of the town council, you think they care? Some of them just live in big houses and in big condominiums away from Bukit Batok. If you don't bring these matters up and continue to put pressure on them, make them accountable for the decisions they make on your behalf, then you're not going to get the kind of neighborhood, the kind of estate that you deserve, that you need. And so they're spending huge amounts of money, your money that are raised through taxes and the town council fees, and they continue to raise. GST is going to be implemented soon. And because all this comes from the taxpayers, you have the right to make sure that they're wisely spent, prudently spent on your behalf. My thinking is that if they're going to spend all this money, all this massive 5-year plans that they put out, then the people in charge, the MPs, the town council, need to put out a detailed plan to tell you what projects are being used for, whether it's going to be useful or not from their assessment, and how much is it going to cost, not just in terms of building it, but in terms of maintenance as well. And then be specific. And as I understand it, these neighborhood renewal programs need to be put to a vote. Before they put up to a vote, explain to residents clearly what they're going to build and what is entailed. If we are going to be an intelligent, responsible, mature society, mature people, then we must be able to hold those people we put to run the country, to run the constituencies, hold them accountable and make them be more transparent in their dealings with us. You know, democracy is not just an exercise of casting your vote once every 4 or 5 years. In between, it's our responsibility, our duty to make sure that the country is run well, public funds are well utilized, that decisions are made in the interests of the people, not just the ruling party and not just the MPs. At the local level, here in Bukit Batok in constituency, the same must apply. Residents, Bukit Batok residents, must hold the MP responsible. The town council had promised you before the elections that they'll do this and the other, to do it with wisdom, to do it with prudence, and to make sure that they do it in the interest of you, the residents. MPs, obviously, I'd like to see them hold regular town hall meetings with you like this. If COVID, bars us from meeting physically, then let us, we can always conduct this online. And Mr. Murali should use an occasion then to explain why these NRP projects, these neighborhood renewal projects, were proposed, even if in draft form, in such a slipshod and nonsensical manner, and why there are so many lapses in safety issues, and why that pavement, which residents are clamoring for, why it continued to be denied to them. But, being an MP or being a resident here, you should not just expect a constituency to be run, a state to be swept and kept clean, or just linkways to be built. There's something more to this, and that is building the community, taking care of the people. And that is the topic of my second segment, where we have to aspire to bigger things, rather than just living and existing. We have dreams, we have hopes, we have worries, we have concerns, and all this can only be taken care of if we get into the routine of making sure that we get to know the people. So this is what we've been doing. The SDP team has been here since the GE was held in July. And in the last few months, we had several activities. One of the most fun ones that I had was Lantern Festival during the Mid-Autumn Festival, where we got little kids to come down and have fun with us. And we also distributed some mooncakes. And then there's also this program that we call My Cake, Your Coffee, where I just ask residents, if you will have me, I'm very happy to bring down my cake, and if you can serve me a little drink of coffee, and we can just chat. And so we've had several residents that have done that. We just had fun. Look, nothing very heavy, just something to get to know you, to get to know the residents better, and really just to, tell me what you think, and somebody said your aspirations, your concerns, and what you would like to see in this community. We've got lots more that's coming up. For example, I'm just really excited about this as well. Next Saturday, we're going to have this get-together, Halloween, right? And this is just a picture that I took from online. Bring your little kids down. It's a lot of fun. It's on a Saturday, and we're going to gather at the MRT station to give out sweets, candy, chocolate. So come in your costumes, whatever that you can think of. Be creative, right? A pirate, a fairy, in this case, Spider-Man, your favorite Avengers superhero, and let's just have some fun. I haven't made up my mind yet what I'll come in, or whether I'll come in any costume at all. But it's just going to be lots of fun. So please look out for it. I'll announce on my Facebook when we're going to do this and how we were going to do it. Okay. I also just very happy to announce to you some of the, as if you followed my Facebook post, some of these activities that we have. We collectively, we call it the Pathfinder series. The name says it for itself, where we organize activities this year and holidays for our children, for youth. Parents, if you thinking of what to do with the children rather than having them on their phones all the time. Register for anything from speech and drama to enjoy music through song and playing the instrument, maybe even learning Japanese art or having public speaking, building up your confidence, or even just learning a chess where, well, I'll come in, I'll try to see if I can teach some of the children here the joy of playing chess. Let's have some fun, right? It cannot always be just schoolwork. And we do this because, you know, we want to expose children in our heartlands and our neighborhoods to some of these activities that they might not otherwise be exposed to during this school term, okay? And then medical services as well. All right, I was visiting some residents, the older folks come across, and some of them find it very difficult to get to, you know, to where they make their appointments at polyclinics and even go to hospitals. So we've got a medical doctor, Patrick Key, here to tend to them if they need our services, to visit them, to make sure that things are all right. And some of the lower end, lower income, if they live alone, they may fall through the cracks of the social services. They still don't know. Please, if you know them or of any one of them, or if you yourself need some of these services, please get in touch with them, with us. And at the end of this meeting, I'll flash on the screen some of our contact, and you can use that to please let us know if you need these services. Okay. Again, why are we doing all this? It's because, as I said, we want to build a community. Now, you can organize some of these activities. Yes, and I know that People's Association, the RCs, they have some of these services, but here is where the difference lies. If you have all the money in the world and just throwing money at these activities, sure, you can get them up. But whether residents come and participate in it, and whether through the process you build bonds between residents, that's another question. And this is where we want to make sure that as we go through some of these programs, that we begin to build a community here. Not just have the People's Association organize these activities for us and we show up at the appointed time and place, do a photo op, carry a broom, pick up some litter, and then go along a merry way again. And all these things, they require a lot of time to not just organize, just to make sure that you spend meaningful time with the residents here in the constituency. I just, again, let me just repeat this. I just fail to see how you can do this on a part-time basis. And when you're elected an MP, your monthly allowance is $16,000. $16,000 a month. And you do this on a part-time basis. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, I ask you, tell me where you can find a job, part-time job, that pays $16,000 a month. And yet the MPs will just find this as a part-time thing, which they do on the side, they moonlight. Is this something that makes sense to you? You pay that amount. You can, you need to, you must do the job full-time. And this is what you can do, and it's a lot more that you can do if you pay full attention, give all your heart and soul into this job. And whether you do this job, whether it's just to go through the motions, or whether you put your heart into it, I will tell you, it shows. Well, I'll go on to my third segment here, but I just want you to tell you that, look, as I'm speaking right now, for the next few minutes, and I'm going through this next segment, please get your questions up. I'll be very happy to answer them and to address some of the questions that you might raise. Okay. In this third segment, I want to talk about the education system. You know, at this time, this is the year end and students are going through the year end exams. PSL is just being concluded, and the secondary 4 students are taking their O levels. Every in a junior college, they're taking their A levels. It's a time of stress. And at the end of the exams, early next year, they will announce the results. And our students will be called back to schools. Those who do well, they celebrate. Those who don't do well are crushed. And if you look at some of these headlines here, Singapore students, they suffer from high levels of anxiety. And many of them are just, there's this dread, the fear of failure. You have even had situations whereby many of them take their own lives because they fail their exams. I just fail to understand why we put our children through such stress. Let me just cite you a few statistics. There was a survey that found that 1/3 of our children, I think they were aged between 9 and 12, their number one fear was the fear of not getting good grades, fear of failing their exam. Another survey found that 20,000 of our children, this was done many years ago, 20,000 of our students sought the services of a psychiatrist because of their stress in the classroom. And get this, 2/3 of them were primary and preschool children. Can you imagine that? Another study found that in a survey of American and Japanese and Singaporean students, and asked them what was the number one fear. The American and Japanese children said that, well, maybe it was a death of a parent or the loss of a friend. That was the biggest fear. You know, the Singaporean students answered that their number one fear was a fear of failing their exams and not doing well. Why are we subjecting our children to such a monstrous system? And it's not that because, you know, we can get them to become better students, and when they graduate, they become better citizens. Over and over, we hear that all this affects their mental stress, mental health. And, you know, of late, we've seen that millennials are taking their own lives, dying by suicide in record numbers. Have we come to this stage where some of these remain as psychological stars from the school days and carried on over into their later years? And what's all this for? We make sure that they memorize all this, and there's so much content that they must regurgitate during exams. Why? In this day and age, maybe in the 60s, 70s, but you have Google. And if you're going to beat Google in terms of memorization of facts and figures and answering questions, then I say good luck to you. But this is where I think our education system is just still is in the Jurassic age, right? It's fossilized. We haven't progressed. We haven't found the courage to reform, to change the system, to adapt to the changing society around us. The global situation right now, everybody's competing on in artificial intelligence, on creativity, on innovation, and here we're still stuck in terms of memorizing and rote learning, and that's just not going to cut it. And if you think about it, if our education system is so good, if we're producing productive, competitive workers, then why is the government continuing to bring in foreign workers and saying that without them, our economy is not going to cut it? That it's not going to boost productivity, and that without foreigners, we can't provide jobs for our own people. You know, and I've heard from so many of our teachers, and we've got people that just fed back to me. They just don't have time to teach because the syllabus is so wide, and then they've got CCA thrown in as well. And what they're just doing is just dump the information on the students. And if you don't do well, if you cannot keep up, the problem is always the student or even the parent, but never the school, never the system, never the teachers. So what do? If it's your fault, well, if you can't keep up, go look for private tuition. to the point that we have tuition, private tuition, that's $1 billion industry. Now ask yourself this, if you're a parent and you know this, you find tuition for your students at the secondary level. Each subject is about $200 and upwards, right? And if you have multiple subjects, you can be as much as $1,000 over a month. How is the average household going to be to afford that? And if you cannot afford it, then what happens? You're going to be left behind. So this whole idea about just this system whereby people are constantly gearing and studying just for exams and testing on only of one form of intelligence, that's a huge, huge problem. And when it comes to intelligence, it's such a complex subject. You know, in psychology, I'm sure you've heard of this experiment, right? Where we begin to test some animals for intelligence. This is one experiment where they took a maze, a tea maze, right? And it's filled with water. So you put rats in and they swim down this alleyway. And then at the end of it, they either turn left or they turn right. If they turn right, there's food over there. If they turn left, there's nothing. So some rats will swim down the alleyway and they'll learn very fast. They'll pick up after a few trials to turn right. And then from there on, they'll turn right every time to get the food. So rats that learn fast, well, you put them in a category of fast learners, right? And the slow learners. So you call them the intelligent group, and the other group, second group, we call them the dull group. That's, of course, an intelligent group, isn't it? Is it really? Because when you change the parameters now, instead of having the food there at the end of the maze, you have a hatch, an escape hatch, where they can then crawl out of the water. And on the other side, there isn't. It's just a blank wall. You take these two groups of rats, the fast learners and the slow learners, and you put this down to the same experiment. You find that there is then no difference in terms of the performance. The intelligent group don't figure out any better. In fact, they're all at random. And the dull groups don't fare any worse. In fact, some of them pick up faster. This is where what intelligence is all about. The parameters, what you set as your incentive, your goal, the different kinds of skills that are needed. All these work in. But when you put students in through and you make them only memorize and regurgitate the information, some students are going to do very well. But it doesn't mean that they are more capable, that they are better students, more intelligent students. It just takes a different skill set. Our education system must be broader than that. Otherwise, we'll lose a lot of talent. We need to train students how to think, not what to think, how to teach them how to solve problems, to think critically, to think creatively, how to express themselves, articulating themselves, communicating. That's almost everything now in today's society. And when you subject our students to whenever they pick up the book, it's about studying, it's about just for exams. And when you keep pairing it up with, just reading books, very soon you find that they come to hate picking up books. And it's all psychology 101, isn't it? You pair an event, an object, or an act with a noxious stimuli, then you after a little while, the person then begins to associate that act with this noxious stimulus, and that's where they begin to develop this very adverse kind of behavior. We must associate books, reading, not with exams, but with discovery, with pleasure, the joy of reading, with inspiration, with learning. That's how we're going to get our people right now not to hate books, and you don't have to wonder why ours is not a reading society. Just in case you think that we're just all complaint and nothing else, I want to draw your attention to the fact that to our education policy paper where we've made a lot of policy proposals, like, for example, abolish the PSLE. It doesn't make any sense to put our children through this testing whereby they're then branched out into the different streams at age of 12, right? And then we want to lessen content, broaden the curriculum, teach more than just math and science and English. Make sure you expose them to some of the different subjects that I just mentioned earlier on. And then also reduce the number of students per teacher that they teach. Right now, teachers are just loaded with work. And the more students you have per teacher, the less attention the teacher can provide for each student. Unfortunately, we're not in Parliament to prosecute this issue, not to be able to debate and raise some of these matters up. And I fear that with every passing year, with every passing election cycle, we're just pushing the situation, the problem down the road, and we become less and less competitive globally, even as other societies are beginning to find ways and means of making sure that their education and fits the time. We still have a government that's very reluctant to want to reform our education system for reasons only they know. So I'd just like to wrap up my presentation here. And for now, just to be able to tell you, look, if you want to receive some of this information, some of these announcements of our services, our programs, please get in touch with us. I'll put the addresses up, the contact on Telegram, WhatsApp, on email. If not, then I'll post it in the comments section. But please, do get in touch with us, especially Bukit Batok residents, to receive some of this information that we're putting on. It's very difficult to communicate if we have to constantly go out and flyer, give you physical copies of flyers. It's expensive and it's very labor intensive. So please get online with us, and we'll be more than happy to get this information to you. So as I said, I'll just conclude what I have to say, and it's back to you, Dennis. We take questions and comments from you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Chi, for sharing your wonderful insights and programs that we planned. We will now start our Q&A session, but just a reminder to, if you want to type in your question, please indicate your name, block number, and question in that order. Or if you want to come on live and be unmuted, just type in live, L-I-V-E, if you wish to be unmuted, okay? Now, we are going to kick it off with this first question here from Aloysius Lee from Block 119. It's actually more of a statement, and actually his question is quite similar to another question posted by this lady called Siu Ing, so I will attempt to just combine the two, okay? So basically, Aloysius from Block 119, he says that the bus stop near block 132, there is no traffic light, and people cross the road quite regularly in the absence of a traffic light, and he thinks it's very unsafe. So he wonders, what are your thoughts on it? Also the same for Siu Ing from Block 183. She's interested to know your thoughts on the lack of a covered walkway to a bus stop in front of the market at Block 154 and 183. So basically, what are your thoughts on the lack of these necessary facilities?
I think I'm pretty sure some of the officials at the Jurong Clementi Town Council are listening in, and if you are listening in, these are the things that you should be paying attention to before you come up with a grand 5-year master plan. The first thing that I think the MP should do and the town council officials should do is to consult and to ask residents, people like Aloysius and Siu Ing, and ask them, well, what do you really need? What is there that, are the dangerous spots that they haven't found out, that they haven't discovered, and then begin to talk about some of these things. So if you're listening in, there you go. These are some of the matters here. And I just want to, kind of give you some information on how this process works, right? It's NPR, that's called the Neighborhood Renewal Program. They're just proposals put up by the town council, and they have then to seek funds for these projects. and it's still for, of course, in the next 5 years, these funds are still have to be put up, and I think it might take them several more months to do it. But as I said, it's not etched in stone at this point, so they can still put in these proposals. And look, I'd like to meet up with you and to be able to look into the situation and then put up, a reasoned, a very reasonable kind of proposal that the town council can then take up and build to at least the needs of the residents. But this is where I come back to the earlier point. You need time. You need to spend time with residents to make sure that you get down to the ground and see what their needs are. And then not only for just this one or two persons, but then ask the neighbors, right? In other words, the few blocks around that area there, is this something that we really need? And then have sessions with them to make sure that, hey, look, this is something that's really needed. And Aloysius and Sue, and I'd be happy to come down and meet with you and just look at the place and see how we can make sure that some of these projects and some of these structures really begin to benefit the residents. So if you have something in mind or some time that you have, please message me and I'll be more than happy to arrange to meet up.
Right, very good. We have another question here from Ishak from Block 209. Now, his question is, with regards to the town council, I believe he might have or has experienced like raising up issues to the town council, and he's asking like, how do you pressure them to do the work that's needed?
Thanks, Ishak. That's a fantastic question. This is where democracy comes in, right? If you have a venue, an avenue whereby you can bring up these matters to the fore, in other words, to let your fellow residents know. And then if the town council continues to ignore, which unfortunately in the past several months, I've had many residents say that, the town council has not responded to some of the requests, some of the things that they want to bring up or that they brought up and not been responded to. And if they continue in this mode, in the next elections, you have the opportunity to vote for another representative, another person who will take care of the town council and be more responsive to your needs. This is what I'm talking about when you hold a person that you put in office accountable, to make sure that you continue to relate to your fellow residents, that if you don't live up to the standards, the next election comes, out you go. And this is where I think it's important that I'll do what I can to sometimes highlight to you, transmit your messages to the town council, and sometimes when you put up and you make sure that some of these are reasonable requests, make sure that you put the pressure on the town council to attend to these projects and to these requests. And if they don't, then let's make it public and tell them and tell the residents here how slipshod they've been and how uncaring they've been. The one thing that I've noted, right, if you look at the town council website and some of the issues that I raised before the elections, they actually have in their town council, if you go in right now, I think it's still there, they have two sections where they responded to the issues that I brought up, whether it's that cordoned off area or whether it's the uncompleted projects, the delay in some of the contracts, some of the matters that the letterbox, that the boxes area that have not been tended to. They actually very quickly came up and rectified those problems and then came up with press releases and put it up on their website. And all this was done before the election. After the elections, the last time I checked, they just refused to even acknowledge some of these issues. Why? Because they know that as long as after they get your vote, after they're elected into office, they can then begin to ignore you until the next elections comes around again, and then they're very responsive again. That's not the kind of officials that you want to see in charge running your state, running the constituency. You want people to be on their toes all the time. Because, as I said, some of these lapses here, most of the time, nothing happens. But when something happens, when tragedy strikes, it means life and death. I give you the example again of this fire in Block 210A, where they took the eye of the ball, and for years, I'm sure nobody noticed that until a fire came along, broke out, and then SCDF personnel was scrambling high and low, found no water. And what happened? A resident paid with her life. That's not the way that town councils should be run. That's not the way officials should behave. When you are elected, spend your time, your energy, your waking hours, making sure you tend to the needs and do the work that you've been elected for. I hope I've answered your question, Isha. And at some point, I hope again that to meet up with the residents here so that we can talk about some of these issues and problems.
Right. So the questions are really coming in fast and furious. There's another one from Cassie from block 623 here. So her question is, her problem right now is that she has feedback to town council for many years with regards to a tree, must be a huge tree, which is opposite West Mall at the roadside, which is blocking the light and that front to her house, and that she has to resort to even switching on the lights even in daylight at home. So what should she do?
You know, you're 623, that's close to Bukit Batok Central, right, Casey?
Oh, sorry, Dr. Chi, I forgot to add that she reported it to the town council, but was directed to NParks to remove the tree, but no action was done. Request ignored.
You know, this is one of the things that I think the relevant authorities should be the town council still, because they're in charge of the vicinity, although NParks are the ones that will take care of pruning trees and making sure that things are all in order, especially when it comes to the foliage, the environment, gardening and so on, landscaping and so on and so forth in certain areas. But you're right to have approached town council. And if the town council has gone to NParks and made sure and it's communicated the problem to NParks, then the town council, if I was running the town council, this is what we'll be doing. We'll send at least the town council estate officers down to take a look at the situation and assess it. And if it's a situation that really warrants action by NParks, then you follow up with NParks, right? But then don't refer the resident to NParks, where they then have to deal with another authority, right? You take it upon, the town council should take it upon itself to follow up with NParks on behalf of the resident and get the situation resolved. There's no point in just pushing paper, pencil, and in this case, your emails, and say, okay, well, you're in charge, so you take care of them, nothing to do with us. And this is where I just want to bring up this point. You know, you do realize that Bukit Batok does not have a town council on its own, don't you? It all comes under the Jurong Clementi Town Council. And it's all under this huge, it must be at least 3 constituencies, 1 GRC and 2 single seats, 2 SMC. And you have this same few offices in charge of such a big area. You cannot possibly be paying attention, special attention to just the Bukit Batok SMC. And this is where my concern has been. And I talked about this just before the election, that it's important for Bukit Batok to have an MP, a town council that's just dedicated to this constituency. Otherwise, your attention is just going to be spread out, and then you get problems like these. So, Cassie, if you're concerned about this whole matter, I think it's important for us to continue to highlight this. And if you send me a message, an email, or a comment, I'd be more than happy to put up on Facebook and forward it to Jurong Clementi Town Council and bring it to their attention. And let's continue to put pressure on them to act and act quickly, expeditiously, and take care of the matter soon.
Great, very good. Okay, another question here from Joshua. Now he says that he has friends that are concerned if Singapore were to have a minimum wage, many jobs would be gone. Low wage becomes no wage. So what are your thoughts on that?
Joshua, just one thing I want to tell, that's a fallacy. I'd like to point out to you that more than 90% of countries' economies in the world have some form of minimum wage legislation. If not, then there's collective bargaining. And if you think that this is all going to ruin your economy and make businesses a living nightmare, then how have these economies survived? Whether you're talking about in Asia, Japan, South Korea, Hong Kong, whether you're talking about Europe, Scandinavia, and the Americas, all these countries have minimum wage legislation. All it means is that the lowest wages of our workers are not paid amounts that they cannot live on, right? That somewhere there must be this balance. You go to the market, you bargain, don't you? The vendor does not come up and tell you one price and that's it. If you don't want to buy it, you walk away. But guess what? This doesn't exist in the free market when it comes to labor, when it comes to wages. If everybody are forced to live on wages that are not just, that are not livable. If you work full-time, you still cannot pay for your house, your social security, cannot pay your medical expenses, then what's the point? And this is where minimum wage comes in. There's a cutoff. Now, everybody thinks that then how, what, like that employers cannot sustain because wage costs are going to go up. But they don't think that when people have more money in their pockets, then they go out and they spend, right? These people who are living on minimum wage, they don't go to Paris for an extended holiday. They buy from shops that are around and the groceries that are there. They buy the daily necessities. These gives our shop keepers, our businesses, that boost in income. And that's how you begin to get your economy in a healthy state, whereby you don't have, on the one hand, people who are so rich, and on the other, where people just cannot afford to have decent wages. This is not the society that we should aspire to. So, but very clear in our minds, okay, that when we come to minimum wage, we're talking about the lowest of our workers paid, that they are not paid below a certain amount that they cannot live on. And also, this is another matter that we should be very mindful of. It's something which was spoken for a long time, and the whole idea that somehow or other we're going to bankrupt our society because we pay our wages decent levels, that's a real fallacy that we need to get out from. So I hope I've answered your question. And please, again, I do want to refer you to our economic policy, which we've talked about this at length. And please avail us. I cannot bring it up in this short span of time, but please go into our website and look it up and read it and really learn what really minimum wage is all about.
Right, great, good. So before I read another question, we do have an option for you guys to come on live and be unmuted, and you don't need to turn on your camera. You can just ask your question live. So we do encourage you, if you can, just type live in to the chat so that we know who you are and we can unmute you. Any takers? Going once? Twice? Okay, while you're thinking about that, we'll just ask another question right here from Sufyan 621. So his question is actually directed to Mr. Murali, because he is wondering whether there are any plans to upgrade or revamp Bukit Batok CC, because for many years it looks old and underutilized. Yeah, and he thinks that the CC has a great location for all Bukit Batok residents. What are your thoughts on the matter, on this?
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the CC comes under the People's Association, but still, I think your residents should be able to voice this concern to the MP that was running this estate. And I think that's a whole question that would be very reasonable for Mr. Murali to pick up. And I said that during my presentation, I hope you'll come online as well and talk with residents and tell them directly what his thoughts are, what his plans are, and for residents to ask him questions like what they're asking me right now. And you know, Dennis has a point in there. I'd like to hear from you, directly from you, not because of anything, but I just want to make sure that we have this open communication where you can come on, and just don't feel bashful about asking me questions, even the tough questions. I'd be more than happy to address. Okay.
Great. So let's just, any takers to come on live? Everyone's pretty shy today. Okay, I will exercise my moderator privilege then, and I will pose you a question, Dr. Chi. Okay.
Sure.
So in light of COVID right now, in this situation, almost every country in the world is obviously suffering to some degree. Now, the Singapore government has rolled out a whole slew of plans and programs and budgets to deal with this scenario or this situation that we are in right now. But what are your thoughts on the various programs and budgets that have been rolled out? Do you think that they have been utilized well? And do you see another way forward?
You know, this whole thing started, this mess started when the government, at the onset of the virus, the pandemic, the government took its eye off the ball, and rather than really working in a concerted manner towards minimizing the situation, they then immediately turned towards wanting to call for elections. And in the midst of the epidemic, started going on for walkabouts and so on. And then the worst nightmare happened, and that is an explosion of cases came about. And the foreign workers' dormitories then got hit so hard. And a lot of people still haven't realized that because of this mistake, that we had to spend like $92 billion in the budget just to make sure that that the economy is kept up, and that we try to keep this matter under control. That's a huge, huge problem right now. And some of these funds are not well utilized. Some of the people who are in the small and medium-sized enterprises running the businesses, they're still suffering. And I know many of them have indicated and fed back this matter. And some of these people are still not getting what the amounts that put out that's due to them. And still a lot of bureaucracy and red tape. And so we have this problem. And I do want to make sure that at least we are able to continue to address this problem. But again, as I said, unfortunately, we are not in Parliament, and it's hard to address some of these issues and make the government respond to it. But yeah, I agree that many of these programs are not done in the short span of time. It's hard for me to lay out budgetary concerns right now, but we've talked about it at length during the GE, during the election period, and we're happy to do it again going forward in the next weeks and months. So if you've got questions that you want to submit in this area, please either put in the comment section or put it down in writing and send it to me, and we'll be happy to address them. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Chi, for that. And on that note, we shall conclude today's virtual town hall. Thank you, residents of Bukit Batok, and for all other Singaporeans who have joined us here. A big thank you also, obviously, to the man himself, Dr. Chi, for conducting this session. We hope you found this session useful and that you will continue to follow us, support us, and look out for our team's updates via our various social network platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, okay? And so on and so forth. If also you have any other questions or queries or concerns, please email us at bb, that is Bravo Bravo BB at yoursdp.org. Okay? Have an awesome weekend ahead, and we hope to connect with you again real soon. Goodbye. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.